Captain Jake Morrison stared at the empty space where the human colony used to be. His ship, the Harmony's Edge, floated silently above the dead world of Kepler 442b. 3 days ago, 50,000 humans lived on this planet. Now there was nothing but ash and twisted metal. Amy Rodriguez turned from her communication station. Her face was pale and her hand shook as she spoke. "Captain, I found the last transmission from the colony. You need to hear this." The bridge fell silent as Amy played the recording. Static filled the air. Then a man's voice came through, desperate and afraid. "This is Colony Administrator Pete Collins. The syndicate forces are in the city now. They're not taking prisoners. They're killing everyone. Women, children, everyone. We tried to surrender, but they won't listen. If anyone receives this message, tell Earth that we tried to be peaceful. Tell them we tried to follow the rules. But these aliens don't care about rules. They only understand violence, and we forgot how to be violent. God help us. We forgot how to fight back." The transmission ended with the sound of weapons fire and screaming. Jake closed his eyes. For 50 years, humans had been the galaxy's peacekeepers. They solved problems with words, not weapons. They helped species that couldn't help themselves. They stopped wars before they started. The other aliens called them gentle giants, the civilized ones, the species that proved evolution could create wisdom instead of just strength. But Jake Morrison remembered what his grandfather told him about Earth's history. About the wars, the struggles, the times when being nice meant being dead. His species had chosen to be better than their violent past. They had chosen to be the helpers, the protectors, the ones who made peace instead of war. Now 50,000 of his people were dead because they had tried to be nice. "Sir," said Lieutenant Ben Clark from the tactical station. "I'm reading 7 syndicate ships approaching our position. They're armed and moving fast." Jake looked at his crew. These were good people, peaceful people. Amy had 3 children back on Earth. Ben taught alien children how to read human literature in his spare time. Dr. Lisa Carter, their science officer, had spent 20 years helping other species cure diseases. "They want to see if we'll fight back," Jake said quietly. "They want to test if humans are really as soft as they think we are." The syndicate ships came closer. Their weapons were charging. Jake could see it on his tactical display. They weren't here to talk. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to kill more humans and see what would happen. "Captain," Amy said, her voice stronger now, "I'm receiving a transmission from the lead syndicate ship. Put it through." The face that appeared on the main screen was insect-like, with compound eyes and clicking mandibles. Jake recognized the species. Klaxon, one of the 7 races that made up the syndicate. This one wore military markings. "Human vessel," the alien clicked. "You will surrender and prepare to be boarded. Your species has interfered with syndicate operations for the last time." Jake stood up slowly. Behind him, his crew waited for orders. These people trusted him to make the right choice. For 50 years, the right choice had always been peace. "We are on a diplomatic mission," Jake said calmly. "We're here to investigate what happened to our colony. We have no hostile intentions." The Klaxon's mandibles clicked in what Jake recognized as laughter. "Your colony resisted. They were eliminated. Now you will be eliminated. This is how the galaxy will learn that humans are weak." Jake felt something change inside him. It was like a door opening in his mind, a door that had been locked for generations. Behind that door were memories that went back to the beginning of human history. Memories of ice ages and predators. Memories of species that tried to destroy humanity and failed. Memories of what humans could do when they stopped being nice. "Lisa," Jake said without taking his eyes off the screen, "tell me about human evolution." Dr. Carter looked confused but answered. "We evolved on a death world, Captain. Earth tried to kill us with weather, predators, diseases, and disasters. We survived by becoming the most dangerous predators on our planet. We hunted in packs. We never gave up. We turned everything that tried to kill us into a tool to make us stronger. And the other species in the galaxy? They evolved from prey animals or on peaceful worlds. They developed cooperation and intelligence to survive. They never learned to hunt. They never learned to kill efficiently. Jake nodded. The klaxon was still talking, making threats, explaining how the Syndicate would use human weakness against the entire galaxy. But Jake wasn't listening anymore. He was thinking about his grandfather's stories, about the times when being human meant being the scariest thing in the darkness. "Amy," Jake said quietly, "send a message to Earth. Tell them to activate emergency. Protocol 7. Amy's eyes went wide. Protocol 7 was buried so deep in human military doctrine that most people had forgotten it existed. It was the protocol for when humanity stopped pretending to be civilized. "Sir, are you sure? Protocol 7 means..." "It means we stop being nice," Jake finished. "Send the message." The klaxon finally noticed that Jake wasn't responding to his threats. "Human, did you hear what I said? You will surrender or be destroyed." Jake looked directly into the compound eyes on his screen. When he spoke, his voice was calm and cold. "No," he said. "You're going to leave. You're going to tell your people what happened here. And you're going to remember that humans chose to be peaceful. We weren't born peaceful. We chose it. But choices can be changed." The klaxon clicked angrily. "You threaten us? One human ship against 7 Syndicate vessels?" Jake smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator that had just decided to stop pretending to be prey. "I'm not threatening you," Jake said. "I'm educating you. You wanted to see what happens when you push humans too far. Congratulations. You're about to find out what our species was like before we decided to be the good guys." He nodded to Ben, who had been waiting with his finger over the weapons control. The Harmony's Edge might have been a diplomatic ship, but it was still built by humans. And humans, even peaceful ones, had never forgotten how to build things that could kill efficiently. The battle lasted 3 minutes. When it was over, 6 Syndicate ships were debris floating in space. The 7th ship, damaged but intact, limped away at maximum speed. Jake sat back down in his captain's chair. His hands weren't shaking. His crew looked at him with something between fear and respect. They had just seen their peaceful captain turn into something else, something older and more dangerous. "Amy," Jake said calmly, "did you send that message to Earth?" "Yes, sir. Protocol 7 is now active across all human space." Jake nodded and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, other human ships were getting the same message. The galaxy's peacekeepers were going home. The species that had spent 50 years protecting everyone else was about to remember how to protect itself. And the galaxy was about to learn the difference between a species that couldn't fight and a species that chose not to fight. The age of nice humans was over. The message from Captain Jake Morrison reached Earth in 18 hours. By the time it arrived, President Nathan Cross was already in the Emergency Command Center deep beneath Washington. The Protocol 7 activation code appeared on screens across the planet, and for the first time in 50 years, humanity began to remember what it meant to be afraid. Nathan stood before the cameras, looking tired and older than his 60 years. Behind him, military advisors and scientists waited in silence. The broadcast would reach every human settlement across the galaxy. "My fellow humans," Nathan began, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "For 50 years we have served as peacekeepers for the Galactic Federation. We chose to be diplomats instead of warriors. We chose to build instead of destroy. We chose to protect other species instead of conquering them." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "Today, that choice has cost us 50,000 lives. The Kepler colony is gone. Every man, woman, and child murdered by aliens who saw our mercy as weakness. They tested us, and we failed their test by being too civilized." Nathan's voice grew harder. "Protocol 7 is now active. All human peacekeeping forces are recalled. All diplomatic missions are terminated. Humanity is returning to species preservation mode. We tried to be who you needed us to be. Now we will be who we were born to be." Across human space, the reaction was immediate. On Mars, engineer Carla Jenkins watched the broadcast with her 8-year-old daughter Emma. The little girl looked up at her mother with confused eyes. "Mommy, why did the nice aliens hurt those people?" Carla knelt down and looked at her daughter. "How do you explain to a child that sometimes being nice isn't enough? How do you tell them that the universe isn't as safe as they thought? Because they forgot that being nice is a choice, honey. And some people only respect strength." Emma frowned. "Are we going to stop being nice?" Carla thought about the news. Reports about the dead colony, about the message that was spreading through human space like wildfire. "No, baby. We're going to stop letting people think that nice means weak." On Titan Station, Security Chief Ben Phillips gathered his team in the briefing room. These were men and women who had spent their careers stopping fights, preventing conflicts, keeping the peace between different species. Now they watched footage from the Kepler colony, and their faces changed. "I want weapons inventories checked," Ben said quietly. "I want security protocols updated. And I want every non-human on this station to understand that the rules just changed." His deputy, Maria Santos, raised her hand. "Sir, what exactly are the new rules?" Ben was quiet for a moment. He had grandparents who remembered the old Earth, before humanity joined the Federation. They had told him stories about what humans were like when survival was more important than being polite. "The new rules are simple," Ben said. "We protect our own first, everything else comes second." In the research labs of Luna Base, Dr. Helen Morris was briefing the Human Defense Council about what made their species different. She had studied alien psychology for 20 years, but now she was explaining human psychology to humans who had forgotten what they really were. "Every other species in the galaxy evolved from prey animals," she said, pointing to charts and graphs on the wall. "The Altarians descended from creatures that hid from predators. The Centauri developed from herd animals that survived by running away. The Tidal Collective evolved from fish that lived by avoiding bigger fish." She clicked to the next slide, showing Earth's evolutionary tree. "We evolved from persistence hunters. We chased our prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We survived ice ages that killed everything else. We fought wars with sticks and stones and kept fighting with nuclear weapons. Every disaster that hit Earth made us stronger, not weaker." General Katie Sullivan leaned forward. "What does that mean for our current situation?" "It means," Dr. Morris said slowly, "that when other species face a threat, their instinct is to hide, run, or negotiate. When humans face a threat, our instinct is to eliminate it completely." She turned to face the council. "We've spent 50 years suppressing those instincts. We taught ourselves to think like prey animals because we thought it was more civilized. But we're not prey animals. We never were." The council members looked at each other. These were people who had spent their careers in diplomacy, in peaceful solutions, and making sure humanity never went back to its violent past. Now they were being asked to remember why that violence had been necessary. "So what do we do?" asked Admiral Rachel Davis. Dr. Morris smiled, but it wasn't a gentle smile. "We stop pretending to be something we're not. We stop apologizing for being the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And we remind everyone else why they should be grateful we chose to be their protectors instead of their conquerors." Meanwhile, Commander Ryan Baker was leading a Marine unit to investigate what remained of the Kepler colony. His soldiers moved through the ruins with professional calm, but Baker could see the anger building in their eyes. These were humans who had joined the military to protect people, not to avenge them. "Sir," called Sergeant Tony Rodriguez from beside a burned building, "you need to see this." Baker walked over and looked at what Rodriguez had found. It was a school, or what was left of one. Tiny desks and chairs scattered everywhere. Children's drawings still on the walls, showing humans and aliens playing together under a bright yellow sun. "They killed kids," Rodriguez said quietly. "They walked into a school and killed children." Baker nodded. He had seen war before, but this was different. This was systematic, planned murder of civilians who had never hurt anyone. "Sergeant, I want every piece of evidence documented, every security recording recovered. The people back home need to see what really happened here." "What are we going to do with it, sir?" Baker looked at the destroyed school, at the dreams of dead children scattered on the floor. When he spoke, his voice was cold and certain. We're going to show the galaxy what happens when you hurt human children. We're going to make sure they never forget. The footage from Kepler reached Earth 3 days later. It was broadcast on every human news network, sent to every human settlement, shared across every human communication channel. The galaxy watched as humanity saw what their pacifism had cost them. The response was not anger. It was something much more dangerous. It was clarity. Across human space, families gathered around their screens and watched alien soldiers murder human children. They watched peaceful colonists try to surrender and get shot anyway. They watched 50 years of human mercy and kindness repaid with genocide. And something that had been sleeping in the human soul for half a century finally woke up. In recruitment centers across human space, the lines began forming, not because humans wanted to fight, but because they finally understood that sometimes fighting was the only way to protect the things you loved. The age of human innocence was ending. What came next would remind the galaxy why Earth was called a death world, and why its children had conquered it instead of letting it kill them. The awakening had begun. 6 months had passed since Protocol 7 went active. The galaxy was learning what it meant to lose its peacekeepers, and the lesson was written in blood across 17 star systems. Captain Steve Parker watched from the bridge of his stealth ship, Shadow Walker, as another war began below. The Altarian fleet faced off against Centauri forces over a disputed mining world. 6 months ago, human diplomats would have solved this problem in an afternoon. Now the two fleets opened fire on each other, while human ships watched from the shadows and did nothing to help. "Captain," said his intelligence officer, Lieutenant Nancy Kim, "the Altarians are requesting immediate human assistance. They're offering triple payment for mediation services." Steve didn't look away from the battle. Altarian ships were burning in space, their crews dying because they had never learned how to fight a real war. "Tell them we're not available, sir. They're saying this is a humanitarian crisis. Not our problem anymore." Nancy looked uncomfortable. Like most humans, she had been raised to help others, to prevent suffering when possible. Watching aliens kill each other felt wrong, but orders were orders, and the orders were clear. Humanity was no longer the galaxy's babysitter. The battle ended with the Altarians retreating after losing half their fleet. It was the kind of one-sided fight that humans had prevented hundreds of times over the past 50 years. Now they just watched and took notes. "Nancy, add this to the intelligence report," Steve said calmly. "The Altarians still haven't learned basic combat tactics. They bunch their ships together like a herd of animals. The Centauri are slightly better, but they still think war is just a bigger version of their ritual combat ceremonies." "Yes, sir." "Should I include casualty numbers?" "All of it. Command wants to know exactly how helpless these species are without us." Meanwhile, on Luna Base, General Katie Sullivan walked through the largest shipyard in human space. Where exploration vessels and hospital ships used to be built, something else was taking shape. The new ships were sleek, black, and built for only one purpose. "General," said Chief Engineer Mike Torres, "the first Retribution-class warship is ready for testing. She's not like anything we've built before." Katie looked up at the massive vessel. It had no diplomatic quarters, no research laboratories, no civilian accommodations. Every inch of space was dedicated to weapons, armor, and the systems needed to deliver overwhelming force across interstellar distances. "What's her firepower compared to a standard Federation warship?" Mike smiled grimly. "She could take on 20 Federation ships and win. Maybe 30 if the crew knows what they're doing." Katie nodded. 50 years of building peaceful ships had taught human engineers a lot about efficiency and reliability. Now they were applying those lessons to weapons of war, and the results were terrifying. "How many more can we build?" "At current production rates, 1 per week. But if we convert all the civilian shipyards, we could have 50 ships ready within 6 months." "Do it." Across human space, similar conversations were happening. Humans had spent 50 years learning alien technology, alien tactics, alien weaknesses. They had been the galaxy's protectors, which meant they knew exactly how to protect against every species in the galaxy. Now that knowledge was being turned to a different purpose. On Earth, Rookie diplomat Alex Chen was one of the last humans, still trying to make traditional Federation negotiations work. He sat across from a delegation of Kellen representatives, herbivorous aliens who were literally shaking with fear as they tried to discuss military strategy. "Honored humans," said the lead Kellen, his voice high and nervous. "Our species seeks your wisdom in matters of defense. The Syndicate approaches our borders and we do not know how to respond." Alex looked at the aliens across the table. They were gentle creatures, evolved from plant eaters on a world with no predators. The concept of organized violence was almost impossible for them to understand. "What defensive measures have you considered?" Alex asked. "We have prepared strongly, worded diplomatic protests. We have offered to negotiate terms of surrender that would minimize harm to our population. We have contacted other peaceful species to form a coalition of moral opposition." Alex stared at them. These aliens thought they could stop a military invasion with paperwork and good intentions. 6 months ago, he would have helped them contact human peacekeepers who would solve their problem. Now he was forbidden from offering any assistance. "The Syndicate doesn't care about diplomatic protests," Alex said slowly. "They don't want to negotiate. They want to conquer your worlds and kill anyone who resists." The Kellen delegation looked confused. "But surely rational beings can find peaceful solutions to any conflict? The Syndicate isn't rational by your standards. They're predators. They see your peace as weakness." "Then what should we do?" Alex was quiet for a long moment. These aliens had spent millions of years evolving to avoid violence. In 6 months, they were supposed to learn how to fight a war against species that had been planning this conquest for decades. "I'm not allowed to help you anymore," Alex said finally. "My government has decided that other species need to learn to solve their own problems." The lead, Kellen, looked desperate. "But humans are the strongest species in the galaxy. You have protected us for 50 years. Surely you will not abandon us now." "You abandoned us first," Alex said quietly. "When we asked for help investigating attacks on our colonies, you called us paranoid. When we warned you about Syndicate military buildup, you said we were being aggressive. When 50,000 of our people were murdered, you said it was a minor colonial dispute." The Kellen delegation sat in stunned silence. "We tried to protect you," Alex continued. "We spent 50 years keeping you safe from things you didn't even know existed. And when we needed protection in return, you weren't there." 3 days later, the Syndicate attacked the Altarian homeworld. The assault was swift and brutal. Altarian ships tried to form defensive formations but had no idea how to coordinate their movements. Their weapons were designed for ceremonial purposes, not actual combat. Within hours, their orbital defenses were destroyed, and Syndicate troops were landing on the planet. Admiral Corvex, the same Altarian who had dismissed human concerns about the Kepler colony, sent a desperate message to Earth. His voice shook with fear and shame as he spoke. "President Cross, I am transmitting from the emergency bunker beneath our capital city. Syndicate forces control most of our world. Our military is defeated. Our people are dying. I know we failed you when you needed help. But I beg you to remember our 50 years of friendship. Please send assistance." The response came not from President Cross but from Admiral Rachel Davis of Human Defense Command. Her message was short and cold. "Admiral Corvex, 6 months ago you told us that the destruction of our colony was a minor dispute that didn't require Federation attention. You said humans were overreacting to normal colonial problems. You refused to authorize military assistance for our people." There was a pause in the transmission. "We warned you that the Syndicate was planning a larger campaign. You ignored our intelligence reports. We told you that peaceful species needed to prepare for war. You said we were being unnecessarily aggressive." Another pause. "Now you want us to save you from the consequences of your own decisions." The answer is no. You have 24 hours to evacuate your people from the homeworld before we withdraw all human personnel from Altarian space. After that, you're on your own. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, other species watched the fall of the Altarian homeworld and began to understand what they had lost. For 50 years, humans had stood between them and the darkness. Now the darkness was coming and they were alone. The syndicate pressed their advantage, attacking system after system. Trade routes collapsed. Entire species fled their homeworlds. The galactic economy crashed as panic spread through civilian populations who had never known real fear. And through it all, human ships watched from the shadows, taking notes, gathering intelligence, and waiting for orders that never came. The galaxy had wanted humans to stop being their protectors. Now they were learning what that really meant. The syndicate conquest machine rolled across the galaxy like a wave of death. In 3 months, they controlled 47 star systems and were closing in on the Federation's core worlds. Billions of aliens who had once called humans unnecessarily violent were now learning what real violence looked like when practiced by species that had never learned restraint. Commander Troy Anderson stood on the bridge of the human destroyer Swift Justice, watching New Geneva Station burn in the distance. The massive civilian station had housed 2 million beings from dozens of different species. Now it was a twisted wreck of metal and fire, attacked by syndicate forces who saw no difference between military and civilian targets. "Sir," said his communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah White, "we're receiving evacuation requests from 17 different species on that station. They're begging for rescue." Troy looked at the tactical display. His ship could save maybe 10,000 beings if they moved fast. But his orders were specific. Rescue human civilians only. Everything else was no longer humanity's responsibility. How many humans are on that station? Sensors show approximately 300 human civilians in the residential section. Then that's who we save. Prep the rescue shuttles. Sarah looked uncomfortable. "Sir, the alien civilians are right next to the human section. We could save them too without much extra effort." Troy was quiet for a moment. 6 months ago, he would have saved everyone he could. That was what humans did. They helped others, even when it cost them. But 50,000 dead colonists had taught humanity a hard lesson about the price of being helpful. "Our job is to protect humans," Troy said finally. "Everyone else chose to handle their own problems. Let them handle this one too." The rescue operation took 2 hours. Human Marines moved through the station like ghosts, extracting their people, while stepping over alien civilians who begged for help. It wasn't cruelty. It was the cold mathematics of species survival that humans had learned over millions of years of evolution. Save your own first. Everything else is secondary. As the Swift Justice pulled away from the dying station, Troy watched thousands of aliens trying to escape in inadequate lifeboats. Many would die before rescue ships arrived. 6 months ago, that would have kept him awake at night. Now he just felt empty. On Earth, President Elena Martinez of the Centauri Republic was recording a message that would be broadcast across Federation space. Her government had finally realized what they had lost when humans withdrew from galactic affairs. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice shaking with emotion. "We made a terrible mistake. When humanity asked for our help to investigate attacks on their colonies, we refused. When they warned us about syndicate military preparations, we ignored them. When 50,000 human civilians were murdered, we called it a minor dispute." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "We forgot that peace is not the absence of violence. Peace is violence controlled by those strong enough to use it wisely. Humanity gave us 50 years of peace by being willing to fight the wars we were too weak to fight ourselves." The broadcast continued, but most humans had stopped listening to alien apologies. Words were cheap. Actions mattered, and the actions of the Federation species had made their position clear. The response to President Martinez came from an unexpected source. Danny Wright had been a kindergarten teacher on Mars before Protocol 7 activated. Now he worked in the Human Defense Command's Psychological Warfare Division. His reply was broadcast across the galaxy on all frequencies. "President Martinez," Danny said calmly, sitting in front of a plain white background, "you called us violent when we prevented violence. You called us aggressive when we stopped aggression. You wanted us to be nice. We tried. It didn't work." He leaned forward slightly. "You see, there's a difference between being nice and being good. Nice means never making anyone uncomfortable, never saying hard truths, never doing what needs to be done if it might hurt someone's feelings. Good means protecting the innocent even when it's difficult. stopping evil even when it's dangerous and being strong enough to make the hard choices. Danny's voice remained calm, but his words cut like a knife. We were nice for 50 years. We let you think that strength was bad and weakness was virtuous. We pretended that predators and prey were the same thing. We acted like the universe was fair and safe and kind. He stood up. But the universe isn't nice, it's beautiful and terrible and dangerous, and it doesn't care about your feelings. The only thing standing between civilization and chaos is the willingness of good people to do violent things to bad people. We forgot that. You made us forget that. The message ended with Danny looking directly into the camera. You wanted to see what happens when the nicest species in the galaxy stops being nice. Congratulations. You're about to find out. The turning point came when the Syndicate made their greatest mistake. They attacked Earth itself. It wasn't an invasion. They weren't stupid enough to try landing troops on humanity's homeworld. Instead, they sent a fleet of 200 ships to attack orbital installations and space stations around Earth. It was meant to be a demonstration, a way to prove that they could reach humanity anywhere. Captain Nicole Foster commanded the defense fleet from the bridge of humanity's newest warship, Apex Predator. Around her, 50 other human vessels waited in perfect formation. They had been expecting this attack for months. All ships, this is Foster, she said into her communicator. Remember your training. These aliens think war is about honor and glory and proving who's strongest. They don't understand that war is about killing the enemy as efficiently as possible and going home to your family. The Syndicate fleet approached Earth like they were participating in some grand ceremony. Their ships flew in neat formations, broadcasting challenges and demands for single combat. They had weapons that could destroy planets, but they wanted to fight like it was a sporting event. The human response was nothing like what the Syndicate expected. Nicole's fleet didn't meet them head-on in a glorious battle. Instead, they used the asteroid belt, the moon's gravity well, and Earth's orbital debris as weapons. They attacked from unexpected angles, used the sun to blind enemy sensors, and coordinated their strikes with the cold precision of pack hunters. The battle lasted 18 minutes. When it was over, no Syndicate ship survived to retreat. The wreckage of 200 alien vessels drifted in Earth's orbit, a monument to what happened when prey animals tried to hunt predators. Nicole broadcast a message on all Syndicate frequencies. This is Captain Foster of the Human Defense Fleet. You wanted to test our strength. You wanted to see if we were really as dangerous as our reputation suggested. Here's your answer. She paused, looking at the debris field that had once been the most powerful fleet in Syndicate space. We are apex predators from a death world. We survived ice ages, plagues, and disasters that would have destroyed any other species. We conquered our own planet not because we were the strongest or the fastest, but because we never gave up and we never forgot how to kill things that tried to kill us. Her voice grew harder. For 50 years, we pretended to be something we weren't because we thought it would make the galaxy a better place. We were wrong. The galaxy doesn't want to be better. It wants to be safe. And the only way to be safe in a dangerous universe is to be the most dangerous thing in it. The transmission ended with a simple message that would be remembered across the galaxy for generations. Humanity is no longer playing by anyone else's rules. The message was received by Syndicate forces across 17 systems. Within hours, their advance stopped. For the first time since the war began, the species that had conquered half the galaxy in 3 months had learned what it meant to be afraid. The reckoning had begun, and it wore a human face. 1 year after Protocol 7 changed everything, the galaxy looked like a different place. The Syndicate War, as historians would call it, had ended not with peace treaties or negotiations, but with the complete destruction of 7 governments and the scattering of their fleets across empty space. Human ships hadn't occupied enemy worlds. They had simply made it clear that any further aggression would result in consequences no species wanted to face. Admiral Jake Morrison, promoted from his command of the Harmony's Edge, now oversaw the new Terran diplomatic corps from a massive space station orbiting Earth. The irony wasn't lost on him. Humans were back in the diplomacy business, but everything about how they did it had changed. Admiral, said his aide, Commander Amy Rodriguez, who had served with him during that first terrible day at Kepler. The Kellen delegation is here for their appointment. Jake nodded. The same herbivorous aliens who had once asked him for help, defending against the syndicate, were now here to discuss trade agreements. The difference was that everyone now understood what happened to species that crossed humanity. The Kellen representatives entered the conference room with the careful movements of prey animals in the presence of a predator. Their leader, the same alien who had once asked for human protection, bowed deeply before speaking. Honored Admiral Morrison, we come to discuss the grain shipments our worlds provide to human colonies. Jake smiled, but it wasn't the warm, diplomatic smile he might have used a year ago. It was polite, professional, and carried an edge that made it clear who held the power in this conversation. Of course, I trust there are no problems with the current arrangements. No problems, Admiral. We simply wish to confirm that our species continues to meet human expectations. What the Kellen didn't say, but everyone understood, was that failing to meet those expectations might result in the same fate as the syndicate species. Human diplomatic requests were still requests, but they carried an implicit threat that made refusal unthinkable. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening every day. The Federation Council had relocated to a new station in Earth's solar system, making humanity's central role in galactic politics impossible to ignore. Chancellor Sophie Bell, Earth's representative, explained the new reality to her alien colleagues during a typical council session. The motion before us concerns trade route security in the Vega sector, Sophie said calmly. Human patrol ships have offered to provide protection services. Are there any objections? Silence filled the council chamber. 6 months ago, such a proposal might have sparked hours of debate about human militarism and the need for peaceful solutions. Now, alien representatives simply nodded and accepted whatever arrangements humans suggested. The Centauri delegate raised a tentative hand. Chancellor Bell, what would happen if we preferred to handle security ourselves? Sophie's expression didn't change, but her words carried a weight that made every alien in the room shift uncomfortably. That's your choice, of course. Humanity respects the sovereignty of all Federation members. We simply won't be responsible for what happens to unprotected trade vessels. The message was clear. Humans would protect those who accepted their protection. Everyone else was on their own in a galaxy that had proven to be far more dangerous than most species realized. Dr. Lisa Carter, now Director of Interspecies Relations, was completing her final report on how the galaxy had changed since Protocol 7. Her findings painted a picture of a universe adapting to new realities. Interesting developments across multiple species, she noted in her personal log. The Altarians have increased military spending by 400% and are actively recruiting humans as military advisors. The Tidal Collective has begun developing what they call aggressive negotiation techniques, essentially learning how to make threats. She paused, reviewing data from across human space. Most significantly, prey species throughout the galaxy are showing evolutionary pressure toward increased aggression and strategic thinking. Humanity's example has forced them to adapt or remain vulnerable. They're becoming more than they were, not through conquest, but through necessity. The truth was that humanity had pushed the galaxy species to evolve, to become stronger and more capable of defending themselves. It wasn't cruelty. It was the natural result of removing the protection that had kept them weak and dependent. On New Terra, a recently established human colony, children from multiple species played together in carefully supervised groups. The difference now was in how the non-human children looked at their human playmates. There was respect there, and a healthy fear that kept playground conflicts from escalating. 8-year-old Emma Jenkins, Carla's daughter from Mars, was now living on New Terra with her family. She played with a young Zelante named Kix, one of the few alien children brave enough to interact with humans regularly. Emma, Kix said in his clicking voice, why do the grown-ups look scared when your parents come to school meetings? Emma thought about it the way only a child could, honestly and without pretense. Because they know my mommy and daddy could hurt them if they wanted to, but they won't because we're friends. How do they know your parents won't hurt them? Because my parents choose not to. That's what makes them nice. It was a simple explanation, but it captured the essential truth of humanity's new relationship with the galaxy. Other species no longer saw humans as harmless helpers. They saw them as powerful protectors who chose to be gentle, and that choice made all the difference. The story's epilogue came in the form of a cultural phenomenon that spread across the galaxy, a children's tale told in dozens of languages on hundreds of worlds. Parents would gather their young ones and tell them about the day the Deathworlders stopped being nice. The story varied from species to species, but the core remained the same. Once upon a time, there were creatures from a terrible world who decided to be kind instead of cruel. They protected everyone else and asked for nothing in return. But when those creatures needed help, nobody came. When their children were killed, nobody cared. So the Deathworlders remembered what they really were. They stopped pretending to be prey animals and showed the galaxy what apex predators looked like when they stopped being patient. The story always ended the same way, with parents explaining to their children that the scary-looking humans were still the protectors of the galaxy. The difference was that now everyone understood that being protected by predators was different from being protected by prey. Why do they still protect us if we were mean to them? Children would ask, and parents across the galaxy would give the same answer. Because that's what good people do. They protect others even when those others don't deserve it, but they also make sure everyone remembers the difference between being good and being weak. Admiral Morrison stood on the observation deck of his station, looking out at Earth in the distance. Amy Rodriguez joined him, as she often did during these quiet moments. "Any regrets, sir?" she asked. Jake thought about the question. 50,000 dead colonists. A galaxy that had learned to fear and respect humanity. Alien children who now understood that some species were more dangerous than others. "No," he said finally. "We tried to be what they wanted us to be. When that didn't work, we became what they needed us to be." "And what's that?" Jake smiled, watching human patrol ships move through Earth's orbital space like silent guardians. The scariest thing in the darkness, so they can sleep safely at night. The age of nice humans was over. The age of good humans had begun, and the galaxy was learning that there was a profound difference between the two. Every species still told tales about the day Deathworlders decided to stop being nice, and those tales served as a reminder that, in a dangerous universe, sometimes the only thing standing between civilization and chaos was the willingness of predators to protect prey, even when the prey forgot to be grateful.